Parents, let's talk about social media for a moment. So, I just saw in the news yesterday, yet another country is looking to enact bans on social media for kids under the age of 16. So, I was looking through my news feed yesterday. I saw this article about Spain being the latest country to announce bans for social media for kids and early teens. This has been, there's a few countries now that have gone this way, and Spain is now following suit, along with what they say is five other European countries that are also going to be following this path. The first, of course, was Australia in December, and France has also recently announced some social media bans. Now, I want to talk to you today about this from the perspective of a parent, and specifically a tech savvy parent. And kind of as parents, I'll give kind of my uh, perspective on kind of how to think about this. So, there's more and more studies are showing, and I'm sure you've seen or heard of some that are saying that social media is harmful for kids. Out of all the different types of screen time, like video games or watching TV, social media has been found to be one of the most harmful for kids for their mental health. And I think even as parents, most of us have seen this in our own lives with our own social media. Social media has been around for decades now, and many of us have accounts on various platforms. We've at times succumbed to the endless scrolling, and there is sort of this mental health aspect that I think we recognize in ourselves as adults. And so certainly we can see how that can impact our kids as well, especially with their brains still developing. They're still developing their sort of social aspects and social circles. They're still physically developing in every way. And so, I think as parents, we can see that this can have a negative effect. Well, now there have been studies that have shown that this is indeed negatively affecting mental health of our youth and of the next generations. So I want to quote something that I saw that came from the Prime Minister of Spain when he announced this this week. He is essentially speaking against the tech companies, and of course, this is a ban on a country level. This is a government enforcing bans against these tech companies. This is a political thing. But ultimately, a quote that he said that I want to read here is that he says, "Today, our children are exposed to a space they were never meant to navigate alone." He added, "We will no longer accept that." I thought that was an interesting quote because although this particular article didn't talk about any kind of parental responsibilities in this, that quote really seems to say that, you know, yeah, kids aren't supposed to navigate this alone, but then who would be the one to navigate that with them? Is that not their parents' responsibility? Is it the tech companies that are supposed to be navigating this with them? Is it the government that's supposed to be navigating this with them? I see this as really the responsibility of parents. And, as a parent, it's hard. There's so much new technology out there. It's hard to know what the technology is. I'll give you a story about my oldest child is my daughter. She was the first to kind of go through these different experiences. And even before she had asked me for a cell phone, she was having a birthday party. This was in probably mid elementary school years. She was having a birthday party, and some of her friends did have phones at that point, and they had gotten onto TikTok. TikTok was still a very new platform at that time, and my daughter had her friends over. They said they wanted to film a TikTok. This was something that her friends were doing. This is something that she really wanted to do. Now, I had barely even heard of TikTok at that point. I was totally unprepared for how to allow this for my kid. And so in that moment, I didn't want to say no. and prevent her from like experiencing this with her friends. However, I still had this apprehension that I wasn't sure about it. I didn't know enough about it. I ended up letting her, I, I installed the TikTok app on my phone. She didn't have a phone at that time. And I did let her do some stuff using the TikTok app on my phone and record some stuff. Looking back, it's since kind of become more cautious as I've learned more about those, and I've been able to be more cautious in allowing my sons, as they've grown into those ages, into allowing them to have social media. But, part of the problem for parents is that it's hard to keep up with all this technology. It's hard to know, what's there and what's available. And um, so, I mean, so as these countries look at banning this, and actually the US has put in place, there's been several states, including my own state of California, who has put in place different legislation to try to ban social media for certain certain young age ranges. Of course, social media, the tech companies themselves typically don't allow kids under the age of 13 to create accounts. Now, this is more or less the honor system because it really depends on the date of birth that you enter when you create the account. And if a child doesn't put their correct date of birth, there's nothing to prevent them from creating that account at that point. However, here in the U.S., there have been several states that have enacted legislation. A lot of this legislation has gone to court. There's definitely some First Amendment rights that have gotten called into play. There's also in the United States on a federal level a measure called the Kids Off Social Media Act, which looks to prohibit social media companies from allowing kids under 13, which most of them are already doing to some extent. But then it also seeks to prohibit these companies from using certain types of algorithms with kids under the age of 17. And I think there can be something good to that. Now, whether or not this is a partisan political issue, whether there's a political agenda involved here, I don't know. There certainly could be for some of this legislation that's being put into place. Ultimately, though, having the government force tech companies to put in additional measures to prevent certain age ranges from accessing does not absolve a parent from their responsibilities, in my opinion, nor does it really help a parent with their responsibility of protecting their kids in this way. So, I mean, how are they going to do it? Spain is saying that they're going to use some type of age verification, which seems to be the case with most of these other countries. Age verification is already to some extent in place. So, it's a flawed system. I don't know how to make it better. If there are ideas for these tech companies to actually be able to enforce that in a better way. And I will say that as a parent, if I'm not really monitoring what my kids are doing online, if I've given them devices to connect online and I'm not knowing what accounts they're creating, then what's to prevent them from bypassing these age verification services and still creating an account? So I just don't think that this particular legislation is very helpful to parents when the ultimate responsibility falls on the parents. Now, I do think that tech companies putting into place more parental control features to allow parents to have more control over their kids' accounts and what their kids can do with their accounts, I do see that as being a benefit. And I do wish, and actually Meta said in a blog post to the Australian government, of course, Australia was the first to kind of enact this legislation. They said that they call on the government to engage with the industry constructively to find a better way forward, such as incentivizing all of industry to raise the standard in providing safe, privacy-preserving, age-appropriate experiences online instead of doing blanket bans. And I would have to agree with that. And I think that these tech companies from the get-go should have built more parental controls. They should have built their platforms with parental control in mind, and none of them did, really, as it seems. Now, certain platforms like Instagram have since instituted additional parental controls, like Instagram teen accounts. And I hope to do a video soon where I kind of talk more about the teen account and show you how to set that up for your teens. But ultimately, I think a push forward to work with these companies on the industry level to enact and allow better parental controls, to give the power back to the parents to be able to better protect their kids on these platforms. Now, part of the need for parents in this regard is for parents to be educated on what these platforms are. As I said, when my daughter first asked for TikTok, I didn't know about TikTok. I hadn't been looking up information about platforms and about what my daughter might start asking about. And if you're watching my videos and your kids have yet to sort of come into those ages, then I applaud you for watching this, because you're preparing yourself. You're going to be better prepared than I was. But if you're at the point where you've also kind of made some